So, yeah, we all know lots of evangelists, don't we? You know, they come along and they tell you about their product and start talking to them afterwards, and it's clear they don't actually know anything. Marcus is not like that. Marcus knows his stuff. I spent many an hour speaking to Marcus, getting very drunk and talking about Azure, and very impressed with what they do. So, ladies and gentlemen, big hand for Marcus Robinson.
Good evening. Thanks for the intro, Matt. Yes, so what do I do in my day job, just so you know? So, in addition to coming to events like this and lots of meetups, drinking lots of beer and eating lots of pizza, my day job is generally going and working with customers. So we do projects, short-term projects, 1 week, 2 weeks, and go and work and code with the customers to work on something new, through something else. That's what I do day to day, hands-on. So I don't just talk it, walk the walk as well. I'm going to talk to you about Azure Container Services and Azure Container Instances. Some of what I'm going to talk about has been around a little while, lots of customers are using. Other things are in preview, and some of it's not even at preview stage yet. So a lot of subject has changed, but I'll try and point out, as we go through, what's live and what isn't. So we're going to lead up with Azure Container Instances. So if you're going to run containers, who's working with containers in any way whatsoever? Quite a lot of people. If you're going to run containers, traditionally or historically, we've had to fire up a VM or a cluster to run those containers on. So we've got now Azure Container Instances. So these are a product that is in preview, okay, public preview, and allows you to run containers with no host virtual machine. Now, just point out, I normally come to events like this and talk about case studies and things like that, or I was going to do value stream mapping because it was a bit more culture oriented. But speaking to Matt, is look, come and do some tech, so it is very much what we're doing with the technologies. No host virtual machines, so we can just run containers just like that, okay? No need to deploy VMs, manage them. Platform as a service, basically. I heard some people call it serverless, but I'm not too keen on that term. We deploy containers into container groups, okay? Containers that might be deployed with a sidecar, monitoring containers, something like that. People work with Kubernetes, yeah? Container groups akin to pods, maybe? Okay, you can probably start to gather what this is actually running on under the covers. The main idea of Azure Container Instances isn't for people to go and just deploy them and use them. It's to be used by other services, other Azure services, and I'm going to come on to that later. But if you want, you can go and deploy to them, either fire off the command line, which I'm going to show in a demo in a moment. We can use Azure Resource Manager templates, which is infrastructure as code. So there's a number of different ways we can deploy them. At the moment, they run forever, run 24/7, okay, until deleted. Okay, I think we might get some job-based later on. The nice thing about container instances is they're billed by the second. So there's a small charge for container creation, and then they're billed by the second, okay, rather than by the minute or hour. They've been intended for burst workloads. Okay, they're slightly more expensive than if you were to run a VM at the same capacity. So they're intended for burst workloads rather than things that are running long term. Still work in progress, but I'm going to give you a quick look at them. So all the demos are live. I did a session earlier today and I relied on videos because the internet's been a big... Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first time I've used videos in a while, but everything is live. So if something does go wrong, we'll sure we'll either work through it. Who's used Azure? Wow. If I'd have asked that again, well, even 6 months ago, people would have put their hands up. So first thing I need to do is I need to create a resource group on Azure. Okay. Okay, so a resource group is a container, not a container, we're talking about containers, is, let's say, a group of resources, services, a group of services that we're going to deploy that we can manage as an entity. We can do access control on them, we can delete them all at once, do different rights and things. So I'm just creating a resource group that my containers are going to fit inside. Okay, so that's my resource group. I'm going to do the demo using Linux containers, I thought they're more appropriate tonight. Also support for Windows containers. They do take a bit longer to spin up, but yeah, we can do the same things with Windows containers. So I'm going to create a container, just set off now, show you the command. So very simply, AZ is the Azure command line, container create. The name we're going to give it, it's just pulling this up Docker Hub, we can authenticate with a private registry. This is very basic container, as you'll see. It wants a public IP address, and it's going in the resource group I just created. Okay, so that's created that container. I'm going to check its state. Okay, it's pending, so it'll just be pulling the image, spinning up the compute, and pulling the image down. And I'm going to show you in the port as well, because it's just nice to see things. So this container group here is there. And we can see it now says running. And we get the IP address. I could get that out of the command line as well. If I copy the IP address, all being well. We have our container running. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And we can deploy multiple containers. They all publicly accessible at the moment. There's no connection into a private network, but that will come in time. So that's container instances. But just containers on their own with no orchestration aren't much use. Okay, so we have Azure Container Service. So what Azure Container Service is we build upon the three main open source container orchestrators, Kubernetes, DCOS, and Swarm. And we facilitate the provisioning of these open source orchestrators. So we're not doing anything different with them. It's not proprietary. It's the open source orchestrators we're going and pushing out there. So use all the standard tooling you always would do. It's nothing different if you're running Kubernetes on-prem or anywhere else. Linux containers are generally available on all of these three. Windows containers are in preview on Kubernetes and Swarm, and I think there's work going on DCOS. I do have a hybrid cluster with an agent pool of Windows nodes and an agent pool of Linux nodes, and you can deploy based on the operating system if you do want to run Windows containers. Who's running Windows in production? Well, a couple of people, so it's worth mentioning Windows. Azure Container Service, there's no charge for the service, you just build for the compute that's used. You know, so if you have 5 nodes, you build for the compute for those 5 nodes. It is, underneath it is infrastructure as a service. Okay, you have full access to the nodes. Okay, that decision was made early on because of the maturity of these orchestrators that people need access to go and configure things in the way they want. So it can also be deployed on-prem with Azure Stack. You might have come across that recently. This is Microsoft's on-prem cloud, Azure on-prem. So you buy an appliance from like Dell, HP, Lenovo. You can't do it on your own hardware, but you can deploy in the exact same way as you do the public cloud to the private cloud. We have a number of VMs, VM scale sets, the operating systems, the orchestrators, and then the containers. Just a quick look at Kubernetes on ACS. So I actually deployed this already. Okay, but so we can choose the type of orchestrator we want, which resource group it's going to go into. We can provide SSH keys or use any existing SSH keys in your profile or generate new ones, and how many agents you want. There are a lot more parameters that we can specify, but that's all you need to do to get Kubernetes up and running. Okay, one short line. It takes about 10 minutes to provision. The next line I'm going to run is using the Azure command line to download the credentials. So what this is doing is getting the kubeconfig and download it into our profile. Okay, so this is how that initial your Azure authentication gives you access to your Kubernetes cluster. Download those files. Certificates. Anybody using Kubernetes in production? Well, that's a big change as well. Oops, what's going on here? Resource temporarily unavailable. Don't say the Wi-Fi's let me down. Let's try that again. Let's just try again. Whoever suddenly started downloading something massive, please stop. I've actually got it cached anyway, so what that would do is download the proxy. So, sorry, the kubeconfig. I'm just going to get nodes there, but what I'm going to show you is, kubectl proxy, just to show we have got access to the full Kubernetes portal, and it is as you would see it. Right, normally. There we go, so we've got Kubernetes, and what you'll see on here, it's very straightforward. I've just got two nodes, master and agent or worker, whatever you want to call it. So there's nothing different, it's just Kubernetes running on Azure. Let's get rid of the red text. So I can also do get nodes using the command line. So all I'm going to do is create deployment, that same container, very simply, and a service to expose that. So the deployment is here, not that one, this one. There we go. So what is going on? So I've got secrets stored for Azure Container Registry. This is actually pulling from Azure Container Registry rather than Docker Hub. And then I've got service. Okay, very straightforward. The key thing with the service is it's of type load balancer. So what this does is tells Kubernetes to go and speak to Azure, so you configure a service principal, a user account when you deploy Kubernetes on Azure, and that gives Kubernetes permission to create resources on Azure. So what this does is goes and speaks to the load balancer in front of our nodes and adds a load balance rule and IP address. So just check those deployments are completed. That looks good. What's there? Yeah, that's fine. And if we do get service, we'll see we've automatically got an external IP address. Okay, so Kubernetes has gone and said to Azure, look, I need an IP to expose this external service. And if I copy that address, not very interesting, but it's just to show there's no smoke and mirrors. There we go, the same running on Kubernetes. Okay, back to the slides. So now, how about bringing these two things together? So this is classed as experimental. Okay, it's not even in preview. It's lots of things that don't work, but you can see it's the start of a journey. So what is the ACI connector? So the ACI connector allows Kubernetes clusters to deploy to Azure Container Instances. Okay, so we don't have to have worker nodes. Okay, we probably still would have worker nodes, and we can have worker nodes alongside Azure Container Instances. We might have our long-running containers on nodes and burst out to Azure Container Instances. But what it does mean is we get unlimited capacity as far as Azure can go. On demand, pretty instant, and no infrastructure to manage. And as I said, we can use both VMs and container instances simultaneously. So if you look at that diagram I showed you before, container instances is slotted in alongside the VMs and VM scale sets in the operating system, so we no longer have to manage that operating system. The other thing about this to point out, Kubernetes doesn't have to be deployed onto Azure. We can deploy Kubernetes on-prem or in another public cloud and still use Azure Container Instances. Saw an example on Twitter a couple of days ago, somebody was actually using a Raspberry Pi to run Kubernetes and deploying out to Azure Container Instances from that. So it's quite flexible. So, let's have a demo of that. First of all, I'm just going to show you the project. It is on GitHub. ACI connector. Okay, so we can see the project on here. The code is, it's working. It's actually being worked on. People are merging into it quite frequently. And if you want to give any of this a go, there's step-by-steps and everything on there. But it is all out in the open. Okay, so just to remind us what nodes we've got. We can see our two nodes, our agent and our master. If I then deploy my Azure Container Instances connector, and I'll show you the file I've used to deploy that. So it's using the container, which contains the container instance connector code, and it also takes in our Azure subscription details. which region is this container instance connector going to represent, and which resource group are we going to deploy into. Okay. So if I check that's deployed, yeah, that looks like that ACI connector has deployed. If I now run get nodes, we can see we've got this ACI connector node which represents Azure. So if we want to deploy to Azure Container Instances, we can deploy directly to this node. So I'm going to create a deployment, but directed using the node selector to Azure Container Instances. Just show you that. So it's the same as before, other than we've got selector on node name, and the Kubernetes secret is being passed across to Azure Container Instances so it can pull these containers from the private registry. Check the pods. So there we can see we've now got the Linux website. ACI is running as a pod in Kubernetes, but it's actually running on the ACI connector node. If I go and have a look at the portal again, container groups, we can see it here in the portal. And I can scale it up if I want, so if I scale it to 10 replicas, okay, hopefully all being well, if I do get pods, we can see that scaling up, and the scaling up in the portal. Okay, so that's Azure Container Instances and Kubernetes. So, brief look at some of the container technology that's being worked on at Microsoft. Azure Container Services is being used live now by customers. Container Instances is public preview, and ACI connector, I guess, in time will become public preview. If you want to know more about this, check out some of these links. The links to the docs. Channel 9, there's lots of videos covering this. Brendan Burns is one of the founders of Kubernetes. There's a few videos on Channel 9 going through this process. And the scripts and slides are all available on GitHub if you want to have a look at this later. And if anybody has any questions, please ask away.
Sorry, I've got a mouthful of pizza. And we've got a question, Marcus?
The people that use Kubernetes, is it something that you conceive in of use, or using a platform as a service offering rather than worker nodes? You know, generally interested in opinion. Go ahead.
I'll go to Andrew first.
How compatible is it then? So to pose a question to the question, as a Kubernetes user, I would just want homogeny across any Kubernetes cluster that I deploy to.
Yeah.
So as long as it's essentially vanilla from my perspective.
Yeah, it's completely vanilla. So you can use the Kubernetes scheduler to deploy to it if you tolerate the tame that's on that node, and it'll just be scheduled as normal.
And what's the networking plugin? I guess there's...
At the moment, that's work in progress. So at the moment, they're just publicly accessible, but there'll be network connectivity coming in time.
Cool, thank you, Andrew. Sean, coming for you.
So, is a valid pattern to add multiple of these container instance connectors and then tag them up and say that's in that region, that AZ?
I believe that's the intention. At present, it's not there, but that is the intention. So you'll do multiple deployments. There's a Helm chart that allows you to deploy the connector as well. So you just specify which region as a parameter on your Helm chart when you deploy. Yeah, so you say which region you want to deploy your containers to.
That's cool. What's under the hood of the thing that you're now using as a node that isn't the Kubernetes worker anymore?
Under the hood, I believe it's Kubernetes.
It's still just Kubernetes.
But we don't care. Yeah, it's completely managed in that way.
That's cool.
Thank you, Sean. Any more questions for Marcus?
It's one at the back.
One there. Coming.
So, do you have any specific sort of Azure Microsoft extensions planned, functionality extensions or whatever?
Well, when you say Azure Microsoft functionality extensions for?
I don't know, for your containers, for how you can deal with it, for the latency, for I don't know, what would you...
So with Kubernetes, you can use Azure Files as a volume plugin for Azure Files. You can use managed disks on Azure, Mountains Volume. So there's lots and lots of integration. Are you talking about Kubernetes specifically? Or? There's lots of integration with Kubernetes. You've got Windows containers, which is
I think I'm asking about your extensions for your containers when using Kubernetes, or generally for your container service compared to the other services that are available with the standard things. Anything that you see being different in future and extra?
Extra, not only that it integrates with Azure services and you get the benefit of the public cloud, you get the benefit of having data centers around the world, etc., and that being managed. I think as time goes on, you can see the way container instances are going. People want managed services. So as time moves on, I think more and more will be managed and soft touch, and you'll just be able to deploy your workloads and not worry about the fact that Kubernetes is running underneath, unless you want to, of course.
Okay, just looking at Azure stack with Kubernetes on top of it, sounds like a good way of getting Kubernetes stuck into private cloud, an organization that's maybe not ready to go out to the cloud, doesn't want to run to Linux, that sort of stuff. Sounds pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else, Marcus?
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Marcus?